G'day, my name's EB-Knispel and I'm going to be bringing you some tank gameplay on Zavod. Today I'm going to be going over my game thought process as well as my loadout and some tips and tricks on how to play Zavod, as well as slightly touching on what I would like to see in the next battlefield when it comes to tanking. I'll be also going over my in-game thought process, which is pretty critical into how you actually can play this map really well consistently, and I want to be able to show what I've learnt in the last 3 Battlefield titles carry over into the next game when it releases as well, because one thing I've definitely learnt playing this game, there are similarities or things that carry over between game to game regardless of what the metas are, the mechanics and some other things. Hopefully if you enjoy what you see and hear today, please leave us sub, a like, and come back for the next video. So let's get into it. So you maybe noticed that I went through a huge flank on the backside of that map just then, and if you've been paying attention to the HUD as well, you can see I'm really trying to sneak up on this tank that possibly I could have stole at the start of the round, but either way I'm going to take this situation in my hands and I'm going to secure the kill on him anyway, which means I've done my part and allows for the infantry for the team to push up. See, one of the key aspects of you being a vehicle player in your team is being able to shut down the armor as well as providing opportunities for your team to get on the flag and cap it. As much as people would like to say, oh, vehicles, you're not really PTFOing if you're not on the flag cap, that's completely untrue. So what a tank can do is, because only certain things can actually harm you, you can hold down and do basically crowd control work. So if you know where the spawn points are on this map, you can really make it really hard for when the enemy team has to respond to the flag being capped. So my team pushes up, caps the flag, and they spawn in after we've already killed them, clearing out the flag. They just get all these spawn points which are just off the flag, and because I know where they are, they're going to have to spawn engineer to kill me, to push me off so that they can even get on the flag and recap it or defend it in the first place. So I'm making them having to pick classes, so then they can't get revives, they have to just deal with me before they get on the flag. And that, as a tanker, you are doing your job right there. You're contributing passively to your flag being captured and defended by your team. So that's why I never truly understand the, in brackets, PTFO or die meta, because yeah, you can PTFO, but it's your perspective of what PTFO is. Playing the FN objective can be from defending the flag from the outside of the cap zone, or helping you team hold down certain places outside of the flag which they have to go through to even get to that flag. So that's, whenever I see that message pop up, I just roll my eyes, because it can be taken really out of context if you don't see the bigger picture. Speaking of the bigger picture, you can see me trying to constantly not stand still at this point, because they have the arty truck at this point, and one of the hardest things, and it gets really frustrating if they have the arty truck, is if you stand still for the slightest second to get out and repair, the rockets will come down on top of you and kill you. And it's especially irritating if you have someone that's in the gunner seat that's really inexperienced, and if they're not really actively trying to kill people, they keep you spotted on the map. Lucky enough, this tank that's trying to flank me isn't that very wise in reading the HUD. So if that was a really good tanker right there, I would have been just butt-shotted instantly, and I would have been in a really bad scenario. So if you're going to be in the gunner seat, please try and save your shots for kills that you're actually going to secure. So don't try and shoot things outside of your range or that are a really hard shot in the first place, because all you're doing is just providing information for players closer for them to get the drop on you. Now you can see me here trying to shut down the spawn points while we cap this flag again. So I know they spawn out in the woods over here. I'll come over here, peek and try and get some shots in there. Just be aware that sometimes when you pick that angle, especially on pubs, there's a tow launcher on the back side of their map, and if they're really cheeky and they're constantly watching the angles, you can get hit by that, and that will hit a mobility shot on you. And if you've been mobility hit and you've got a couple of people pushing you with C4 or people on the roof, it's basically a GG for you, and you're going to be going back to the spawn screen. So remember that. I really advise, if you got these center flags but you can't really get out because there's a bunch of laser locks, the little birds locking you up, or there's just so much stuff in front of you, use this inside area here because it is so useful. You can use it to kind of sometimes dodge MBT laws, also the javelin rockets, and you're in a position where you can really drain their tickets down as well. Just be aware that if you've got a couple of cheeky people that are jumping off the roofs, to check the rubble to your side there, especially that's where the rocket launcher spawn is, which does an extra bit of damage to you, and normally always mobility hits you. And when you're on a kill streak, always make sure you're checking the side roads on the map right there, because on those side roads, as you probably just saw me before, a couple of jihad jeeps will come down there and try their best to like get behind me and get lucky, so to speak. As long as you keep watching your HUD and taking in the information that's going on around you and not giving your backside to the enemy, you're going to keep racking up this kill streak. And especially when you know where the enemy is going to come from, and you're just going to get a really high KPM and really start draining their tickets down. And also, hopefully, one of the things that a lot of people don't take into consideration is the more you get inside the enemy's team's head, the more they're going to start choking and making mistakes. They might even start making really desperate plays, which is not going to help work out for them at all, and so they're just wasting more of their tickets. So if you can get in the mind of your enemy that you're versing, you really are doing an extra job for your team as well, because you're making them play bad, and if they're playing bad, they get more frustrated, and if they're more frustrated, they're going to just make more mistakes. There's plenty of evidence out there where they call that the choking method, but I'm not going to go into this because that's a whole other topic, and I want to just talk on about what's going on in this gameplay right here, right now. So you can see I'm in here. I can tell there's a lot of enemies in front of me. I'm not too comfortable just coming out of my shell here, but I can see there's a tank to the side there, so I'm just trying to put in a little bit of damage here and there. So eventually that maybe he might try and push me or pull back or give me a better shot on him. And you can see here I'm not overextending myself. I get that kill on the tank, and I'm just sitting in a position where I'm showing myself enough that I can keep killing the enemy, but not to the point where I'm overexposing myself that they can get behind me. Sometimes one of the most hardest parts of actually becoming a really good tanker is the push and pull, and trying to figure out when to push the enemy or pull them into you and bait them in. Do remember that when you see those vehicles coming past, those AMRAPs, they will take more than one hit to kill. So try and get a shot on them before they can get close to you, because once you get that shot on them, that's going to mobility hit them, and then all you have to do is just drive a couple of more meters away from them, and you won't get basically C4 quadded or have the whole team spawn off it. Believe me, I've actually seen this happen. And what I mean by that is, once they hit it from mobility, the whole squad of 5 teammates jump out, all with RPGs, and all RPG me at once when I had about like 80% health, and that was the end of me right there. So always consider that there's always in Battlefield pubs that there's just going to be those random moments of where just you'll get focused so hard, and you got to be ready and prepared for that. This little area here, if you have fire nades and you have access to the second gunner seat, or if you're the gunner, you can spam fire nades in specific spots in the corners. So where really good inf players will like to sit and hold when they're capping that area down there. You can throw a fire nade in there, and it forces them to come out of those positions and make them easier targets for your infantry to kill them when they're pushing in. Or they might be already hurt, and that fire nade will basically get a free kill on them. Either way, you're going to either out attrition them so that when your infantry pushes in, it's just an easy couple of bullets and they're dead, or you're going to get some more extra kills. When they also own this flag right here, I generally like to sit and hold this middle position here because I can keep eye on the arty truck spawn, and I try and make sure that they never get the arty truck until we get it, and then I don't have to worry about it, and that means there's less things I need to worry about. And there I can actually hold my ground better because I'm not having to worry about that I'm going to get dropped rockets on top of my head when I'm trying to repair my tank. Speaking of things being dropped on top of my tank, do remember when they have roof control and you're pushing up like this, you can get easily exposed to people dropping C4 on you or getting some extra little rockets on top of you, or when you're out repping, they might jump down and kill you, which I think in a couple of minutes here, I'm going to actually die to, yep, here we go, I get C4'd. So that's just unfortunately me suffering from taking in all the information around me and not checking what's going on. You can see here, this game's going to be a really big one. We're only at 50% of the tickets left, and I'm already up to 100 kills here. So I'm going to start probably running out of things to talk about here, so let's just keep going with it. So one of the reasons I decided to choose this loadout, specifically the thermal camo, the HMG, and the AP shell. So the AP shell is kind of like the best of both worlds. So it has decent reload time, decent velocity, and decent damage output. So with that, you're basically kind of getting the best of all the worlds here. You could probably get away with HE and autoload on this map really easily because there's not very many times that you get always into a solo 1v1 with the enemy tank. There's normally a chance that you're always going to run into a situation where the enemy vehicles are already taking some kind of damage. And the reason why I've chose thermal camo is basically on the map and the HUD, you are not as spotted for as long as you would conventionally be with just any other loadout. So you're only spotted for like roughly a second, but you can always then make the argument of just getting in and out of your vehicle to unspot yourself. But this way it just makes it a little bit less strenuous as well, and when you shoot you actually don't appear up on the screen as much as long as well. But unfortunately my gunner is a bit trigger enthusiast, so I'm basically almost spotted the whole entire time, which makes it really easy for the enemy artillery truck to focus me. And this is once again why if you're on comms with your gunner, it's really helpful and useful, because then you can get yourself out of situations where you might pretty much always die and get away with good teamwork and communication. When you're working with just a random gunner, it gets really frustrating as well. And I'm pretty sure this guy that's in the gunner seat, I killed him a couple of times on the arty track on the other team. So that means he's switched teams at this point. He's either got given up trying to kill me, and so he's joined the other side, or balancing up the game. I don't know. So this is just a little thing I noticed while going through the recording here. And before I get too sidetracked here, the reason why I've chosen HMG is because there is a little bit of a skill gap with it. So the accuracy of it is very well determined by click time. So if you're doing your click timing pretty well, you can get very minimal spread and get maximum kills on it. So yeah, you can use the LMG and kind of like flick between targets with like low overheating time, but and also the having the faster bullet velocity, if I recall. But I just find the HMG is more rewarding and actually more skillful out of all the things you can run. Canister shell will probably be in the next thing I would run for close range or infantry that are actually quite skillful at knowing how to AT properly. Otherwise, LMG is probably generally the last option I pick out of all the utility options that you got for that spot. Also, one of the things I also run is active protection, because it's literally the meta. There's almost no other reason for you to use this. I would like to see if this reappears in 2042, that this actually has either a greater cooldown, or just like in Battlefield 5, I do think the ammo system is quite balanced. have a limited amount of times that you can use the active protection before you have to go reload it. But as far as I can see from all the leaks and all that kind of stuff, I don't think we're going to be having revisiting that topic whatsoever. Which also, the reason why I'm running thermal optics is because you have obviously greater field of vision and you can see what's going on around you. It also makes it a little bit easier to see slams, but once again, people that know how to use slams correctly and properly, it's really hard to still see them as well. So it's kind of, with the visual in Battlefield 4, it's kind of like, I wouldn't say devil's advocate at this point, but like, it's almost a necessary evil in the game. As long as there's counters to thermal in the next title, I would not mind seeing it come back. But once again, I feel like every kind of loadout that you have in a game, it should be balanced out with some kind of a hard counter. And in competitive Battlefield, the thermal wasn't actually as broken as people thought it was. You could run hand flares, smokes, the laser light on guns was actually quite blinding as well. And if you knew how to place slams correctly and pull up properly, you wouldn't even see them on thermals in the first place. I guess this kind of leads into my next topic of what things I would like to see in the next Battlefield title. I honestly, one of the things I really enjoyed about tanking in BF5 was you could actually 1vx enemy tanks. And what I mean by 1vx enemy tanks is basically you could verse 2 tanks, 3 tanks, maybe even 4, and you could actually win in that scenario. And in this game, Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 3 and even in Battlefield 5, there was a thing called the glitch shot, where there was a specific spot on the tank where if you shot at it, you could do extra damage, and it was considered a back shot to the vehicle in what the game files and etc. would pick up on. And I found that was like, I guess in my perspective, like the headshot equivalent for vehicles. So I thought it was something that was quite skillful, and if you knew how to play the game correctly, you could easily dodge it. And if you knew that as well, and how the shell system and loadout worked in Battlefield 5, you can run different types of shells. So you could have your main shell and then a anti-vehicle shell. You could be in scenarios where you might be in like a medium tank and you will be able to actually beat in head-ons, or get a side shot on the heavier tank and win the scenario, or be in a scenario where you ran into 2 or 3 tanks and you were actually able to kill all of the tanks by getting behind them and not running out of shells. The one thing I probably was so upset watching is 1v1 tanks in Battlefield 4, how there was so many skillful tankers in there, and when I watched back, there was such awkward times where both the tanks had run out of shell and they were just looking at each other. And they added into the rules, I think you were allowed to actually jump in and out of the vehicle and RPG them, which in Battlefield 3 that wasn't a thing because you had unlimited shells. And I actually have seen 1v1s, 2v2s, and even 3v3s in Battlefield 5 of competitive tank fights, and they were actually, not gonna lie, kind of satisfying to watch. And I noticed that tank 1v1s in Battlefield 5 were more decisive because of the mobility, so they couldn't really outrun the scenario, which I did quite enjoy. So I'm hoping some of those elements carry on to the next title. Anyway, we've reached the end of the video, surprisingly, and I've managed to talk through the whole entire thing. Hopefully I might be putting out one more video before the beta comes out, so we'll see about that. I don't want it to oversaturate my channel with too many videos. I hope you really enjoyed the content that I brought you today, and please leave some comments and thoughts below, what you liked, what you didn't like, or some things you would like for me to go over, or things you would like to see me do. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the content. Peace.